During this next section, this is section 2, if you're following along with the textbook, Revolution brings reform and terror. We're still talking about the French Revolution, and some of the terms that you will need to know for this next section of video, or videos, depending on how long I want to blab. First of all, the Legislative Assembly. This will be the third form of government that we will discuss with the French Revolution. We've discussed previously the Estates General. We are currently with the National Assembly, and now we will look at the Legislative Assembly. The next three terms, the Émigrés, the Sans-Culottes, and the Jacobins, these will be groups of people that are going to be important for the French Revolution. The guillotine, the device that cuts people's heads off, Maximilien Robespierre, and the Reign of Terror, who are connected at the hip. Won't be connected at the head. When we look at how the French Revolution becomes more radical and also more violent. And so we've left off with Louis the XVI has tried to escape France in 1791, was caught and brought back. And so for the past couple of years, leading up to 1791, the National Assembly has been arguing over, creating a new constitution. And finally, in the fall of 1791, the Assembly drew up a new constitution, and in this new constitution, it created a limited monarchy, where much of the power of Louis XVI has been stripped. The new assembly, or the new governing body, the Legislative Assembly, now has the power to create laws, to declare war. However, Louis XVI, or the monarch, still has the power to enforce the laws. This new assembly will soon be divided into three groups: radicals, moderates, and conservatives. Alright, so even though we have this new government with the Legislative Assembly, we still have some of the same old problems that plagued France. Food shortages, social tensions, and the whatnot. And so these groups were divided as to where they sat in the assembly hall. The radicals sat on the left side of the assembly hall. They wanted sweeping changes to the French government, including abolishing the monarchy. The moderates, they sat in the center of the assembly hall. They wanted some changes, but not as many as the radicals. And the conservatives sat on the right side of the assembly hall, and they wanted very few changes, and they wanted to keep the idea of a limited monarchy. There were some groups that outside the Legislative Assembly who wanted to influence the government too. So the two groups that worked to influence the Legislative Assembly, but they were not actually in the government. The émigrés. The émigrés were people, mostly of the nobility, that had fled France during the Great Fear. They wanted to come back, and they wanted to restore the structure that France had seen under the old regime. In contrast to these, people were the sans-culottes, or which meant those without knee breeches. So they were given this nickname or this moniker, as a way to identify them based on the style of clothing they wore. And the sans-culottes, they wanted to enact even more radical changes to the French government, and even though they were not able to do so within the Legislative Assembly, they did find ways to exert their influence on the streets of Paris. Alright, so at the same time France was experiencing some internal dissent, they were also experiencing some serious trouble on its borders. And this was because the kings and the nobles from other countries were watching the events unfold in France, and they were concerned. And the concerns that the kings had in other countries is that some of these ideas of I guess you could say, of the French Revolution might spill over into their own countries and cause similar revolts and some similar challenges to their power that Louis XVI was experiencing. And in fact, there was some truth to this. The radicals did want to see and did encourage their ideas to sweep across Europe. And in response to this, some monarchs, namely those of Austria and Prussia, Prussia is located just north of Austria and is modern day Germany, if you want to find it on a map. They encouraged Louis XVI to take back his power and restore himself as absolute monarch of France. And in response to this, in 1792, the Legislative Assembly declared war on Austria and France. So not only is there trouble going on inside of France, now you are fighting a foreign war against Austria and Prussia. So the war against Austria and Prussia started off pretty bad for the French, and by the summer of 1792, the Prussians were on the outskirts of Paris, and this is when the Prussian commander made the statement that the Prussians would destroy Paris if any members of the royal family were harmed, and this enraged the Parisians or citizens of Paris, and about 20,000 of them. In July of 1792, excuse me, I got my date wrong. In August of 1792, about 20,000 Parisians stormed the palace where the royal family was staying and arrested King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, as well as their children. And then, you know, things started to get even worse. In September of 1792, rumors, once again, rumors started to swirl around Paris that members or royal supporters of the king who had been imprisoned were planning a prison outbreak and would restore Louis XVI as absolute monarch of France. In response to this, we see that the French citizens stormed the prisons in Paris and murder and massacred about 1,000 royal supporters that were or had been imprisoned. This was known as the September Massacres. The government also took some stronger steps to meet the danger from foreign troops, and the Legislative Assembly were persuaded to set aside the Constitution that was created in 1791 and create a new assembly or a new form of government in 1792. This is going to be known as the National Convention, and the National Convention is going to declare the monarchy absolved, or no more, and they are going to declare the French, declare France as a republic. And so no longer is there any form of a monarchy. The French government is now known officially as a republic, where people can vote for representatives to serve in the government. And they also, this National Convention, declared that all male citizens can vote now in the government. Women still do not have the right, even though they have taken a large, major role in the stages or in the steps of this French Revolution. They still do not enjoy the same political rights that men do. So the National Convention now has absolved the monarchy and has declared universal male suffrage and changed France into a republic. So most of the people that were involved in creating this National Convention and all these political changes were members of a radical political organization known as the Jacobins. And the Jacobins were known as taking these extreme steps to essentially saying that anyone who opposed the new government or supported the king were to be seen as traitors. And so as the Jacobins started to gain power in this new government, in the National Convention, not only did they take away all the power of the king, not only did they reduce him to a prisoner or a common person, they also have now decided to try him for treason. And in 1793, by a very close vote, they have decided that King Louis XVI is guilty of treason, and which is punishable by death. And Louis XVI will be executed in 1793 on January 21st in 1793 by manner of the guillotine, which was a new device that had been invented, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a device where essentially you put the head down at the base of this machine, and you release a huge blade that comes from the very top all the way down to the bottom, and cuts the head off. So Louis XVI has now been executed at the hands of these radicals, or the Jacobins, and unfortunately Marie Antoinette will meet a similar fate. And in doing so, we start to see now the French Revolution enter its most violent and radical phase, one which will be known as the Reign of Terror, led by a man named Maximilien Robespierre, who becomes leader of France, and also heading what is known as the Committee of Public Safety. So Robespierre, his number one goal was to rid France of anything, any remnants or anything that would remind anybody of France's past. He wanted to create a republic of virtue, and he, like I said, wiping out anything that resembled France's past. And in doing that, he slowly started to gain power. I said that he had headed the Committee of Public Safety, and the whole point of the Committee of Public Safety was protect France from their enemies. Now, who those enemies were basically, peasants who were horrified by the king's execution, nobility who did not like this increasing, the increasing participation of citizens or common citizens in the government. Church officials who resisted these changes to the calendars that the Jacobins made, where they took away all Sundays, because they didn't believe in in the power of the church, where they closed all the churches in Paris and in other cities, and so these were seen as enemies of the state. Robespierre also, he justified his use of terror by suggesting that it enabled French citizens to remain true to the ideas of the revolution. He saw a connection between virtue and terror, and I'm going to read you a quote by Robespierre here. He said, "The first maxim of our politics ought to be to lead the people by means of reason, and the enemies of the people by terror. If the basis of popular government in time of peace is virtue, then the basis of popular government in time of revolution is both virtue and terror. Virtue without which terror is murderous. Terror without virtue is powerless. Terror is nothing else than swift, severe, indomitable justice. It flows then from virtue." And so, in order to create this republic of virtue, then you must have, some terror, to create this republic that was seen to be true to the ideas of the French Revolution. And a lot of times, the enemies of the revolution were those members of the Jacobin political organization that challenged Robespierre's power and authority. And so this reign of terror actually led to many people, thousands of people being put to death. Oftentimes it was said that they were tried in the morning and guillotined in the afternoon. And I'm reading here that, for example, some of these people were put to death for the flimsiest of charges. An 18-year-old youth was sentenced to death for cutting down a tree that had been planted as a symbol for liberty. And perhaps as many as 40,000 people were executed during this reign of terror. About 85% of these people that were executed were members of the urban poor, members of the peasant class, whose they were the reasons why this revolution was launched in the first place, and now they're the ones that are making up the bulk of the executions during this reign of terror. Unfortunately for Robespierre, unfortunately for the French people, by July of 1794, some of the members of the convention had turned on Robespierre. They demanded his arrest, and in 1794, Robespierre was sentenced to death at the same hands of so many other people before him by the guillotine. And this will launch a new phase of the French